Um, Thank you, Dominic. Thank you, Vice President Obi. Thank you, the co-host, for the opportunity to join you this morning, and particularly thanks to all of you on this, this very early, rainy morning to be able to come out and join in this discussion. We all know, we all acknowledge that women's participation in socioeconomic activities and leadership is critical for development, particularly in post-conflict countries like my own, Liberia. We also know that for long-term growth and development to occur, to be sustainable, the role and contribution of women must be taken into account. This is because when women are poor, uneducated, and have low participatory roles in the wider areas of governance and leadership, the family size tends to be larger, population growth and the effect on sustainable growth seem to be higher. Poverty reduction and gender equality are thus inextricably linked. Many times people talk about my own election as the first female president in Liberia and Africa. But we were able to do this because of women. During the 2005 presidential elections and the runoff, women took this as a challenge and as a goal. The women spearheaded a door-to-door campaign, a sensitization program among market women. They took the responsibility to talk to their children, our nation being so young, with 55% of our population. Our victory was really due to women's self-empowerment. And then when we took over, we wanted to see how we could demonstrate that empowerment in a political sense. And so I looked around to say, let me aim at 50% gender equality to make sure that I place in the positions in government women that would send a strong signal that women actually won the elections and should therefore have the opportunity to run the country. But reality struck home because we could not find enough women, that critical mass of women that had reached that level of experience and education in a post-conflict country to assume the responsibility that we wanted them. We settled for something less than ideal, but something that we believe sent a strong enough signal as to the important role of women. And so we placed women in strategic places: finance, today foreign affairs, commerce, the Inspector General of Police, all of those places where even in our local governance we made sure that we didn't get 50%, but we got about 35% at the junior ministerial level, well over 30%. Another reality struck home. We inherited a devastated country with damaged infrastructure, a country without electricity or running water, very few functioning hospitals and clinics, schools, universities, poor roads, lack of adequate housing. Women and children were badly affected by the poor infrastructure condition that existed in the country. They had less access to health facilities, there's high infant and mortality rates. They spend most of their time carrying water, carrying goods, vulnerable to crime in the process. Girls were kept home instead of going to school because they have to help their mothers or go to the marketplace to be able to provide assistance to their mothers. As a result, they became vulnerable to gender-based violence, especially rape, and in most times this implied a very high HIV/AIDS rate. Traditional practices in our society also added to that. Our girls sometimes are forced into marriage at very early age. As a result, the majority of Liberian girls have their first child before reaching the age of 18. Female literacy is 18.8% compared with 44.6% for men. Female enrollment in primary schools, only 55% compared with 64% for men. Additionally, our market women spend a lot of time traveling within the country and outside the country under poor conditions, poor transport condition, and high cost, trying to bring goods to the market to be able to feed the population. The lack of storage facilities meant that their perishable goods suffered spoilage, thereby reducing the little profit margin that they were able to get. Under conditions of high level of poverty and illiteracy, and among our young women, illiteracy rate, 81%, an alarming 81%, left them all vulnerable. Today, the latest challenge we face are the increase in food prices, something which later on today we'll all be talking about, because it leaves the most vulnerable segment of the population in our society, women and children, as the likely victims. As records show, in our country, 40% of the population is vulnerable to food insecurity, with female-headed households bearing the brunt of the suffering as they spend a greater proportion of their income on food. The main causes of this food insecurity, other than the high prices today, which we're having from abroad, is the access to road infrastructure, healthcare facilities, water, sanitation. What have we done in our country to address this situation? First and foremost, we figured that we had to start with the girl child. And so we enforced compulsory primary education, making sure that we begin to bring that crop of women up right from the beginning. As a result of this, of removal of tuition and fees in the public schools, enrollment increased by 44%. And the majority of these are girls. That, of course, led to other problems. Not enough schools, not enough teachers, not enough teaching materials. But we figure that was the beginning. We also have been introducing literacy microloan programs as a means of trying to empower these women, targeting particularly the market women to enable them to have the literacy to be able to understand in a very rudimentary way the forces of the marketplace. So as they price their goods, as they buy their goods, they can have a little bit of a better sense of how they're going to make the profit, which they depend upon to pay for their children to go to school and to feed the family. We started training programs in leadership, home economics, agro-processing. Under your program, the Gender Action Program, supported by the bank, you started something new. Women became targets for road construction and other urban works, something unprecedented in our society. We went beyond, given our limited resources, through our budgetary process, and decided that we're going to mobilize private money to be able to support this noble cause of girls' education and women empowerment. We established what we call the Liberian Education Trust. We call it our 5,000 program. It aims to rehabilitate or construct 50 schools, train 500 teachers, and gave 5,000 scholarships to young girls. We're about a third in the achievement of those goals in a 2-year period, having raised well over $2 million just from private contributions. We also launched the Market Women Fund, and there we aim to be able to improve the market conditions for our market women. Many of them under conditions of rain and sun, not good buildings, no sanitary conditions, with babies and children in the marketplace with them. We started that program. And I dare say that is also beginning to have an impact, because in our new model markets, we have preschool facilities that are there, so that the women who take their under school-age children to the market can have a place to put them, and you can get teachers to be able to work with them. The international support that we have received for these programs have been very significant. Your program, the program that is coming from UNICEF and other places, have made a tremendous difference. Let me tell you something about the urban works and the road construction program, because we traveled around the country, and it's not part of our tradition for women to be on the road or to do side brushing in the street, because those are jobs for men. But because the women are so anxious to get ahead, because they want to be a part of society, and because they want me as a woman to succeed, they go beyond the extra mile. So you see these women breaking rocks, huge rocks that they gave to be able to ensure that the roads have gravels. And some of them have begun to so excel that they've become the supervisors. When we go on the roads and they point to us and they point to the different women and say, well, these ones now are in charge. They are the ones who are telling the men what to do. They keep the tally to make sure the men come to work on time. And and the good part is that they are proud of doing that. Because when you talk to them, they feel like now they're a true stakeholder in their society. Now they can take the position. And I always tell my final story of women's empowerment, with all the things we're doing, building schools, clinics, telling women that you have every right to society. We still have problems, let me say that. Access to land. Land is a big issue in our country for everybody. because over the many years of illegal land sales, squatters, and all of that, but particularly for women who have never had access anyway, traditionally, and you add to it all the problems, it's still a big problem. And also, they haven't gone beyond microcredit, and that's something we need to work on, to move them from just a $100 credit that they get to be able to turn over, to be able to move some of them. And many of them are starting in that direction. We have many women today that leave and go to China to buy container goods and come back and sell it. Now, how can we target women like that to move them up to the commercial level? That's part of the challenge that we have. As I said, my final story, the one I always tell about women's empowerment and how it starts with the young. I was told by the director of UNICEF, who goes out into the rural areas. She went out to inspect some of the programs there and went to the school where there was a lot of noise in the playground. The boys and girls were jostling each other and making noise and sort of fighting. And the principal came out and pointed to the little girl and said, "You should not be acting like that. You're a girl. So you should be careful. You shouldn't be jostling with the men." And she stopped, and she turned to him and said, "Teacher, be careful how you talk to me. Don't forget, a woman is president." Thank you.